Hello, everyone, and welcome to the January edition of Techspert Talks. I'm Troy Rainey, and I'll be your host for today's session. Today's Techspert Talk session is SAP Connection to Qlik Talend Cloud Data Integration with our own Bill Steinagel and Vahid Darabadi. Bill, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Hi, this is Bill Steinagel. I'm one of the SMO owners for data integration. I've been with Qlik for 6 years now, supporting the data integration platform. Welcome.
Great, thanks. And Vahid?
Hi, my name is Vahid Darabadi. I am part of Qlik Talend support. I've been with the company for a little over 5 years. Excited to be here. Thank you.
Great. Today we're going to be talking about the requirements and prerequisites necessary to create connections to SAP data. Our experts are going to demonstrate for you the actual process using the Data Movement Gateway and talk about some things to remember along the way. Now, can we talk about the architecture for a bit? What is the Data Movement Gateway and where should it be?
The Data Movement Gateway, you can look at that as kind of the engine that does the communication between your source and target endpoints that you defined in your Qlik Talend Cloud tenant. And anytime you pull data, load data in storage, that does a secure connection to the data gateway.
And that's for any communication between the Qlik Talend Cloud tenant and the targets?
Yeah, just a side note, when you set up your source and target endpoints, these are going to use a ODBC level type connection to your different data sources. That's the communication layer to your data.
Okay. What do admins need to prepare to create that connection from SAP to Qlik Talend Cloud data integration?
You're going to want to make sure that you have any of the prerequisites that we list in the user guide for Qlik Talend Cloud. And just a side note, we're doing SAP. So you're going to need to go out to your SAP provider or vendor and get the ODBC client software. That's something that wouldn't be provided from Qlik.
Now, Vahid, can you show us on your tenant where you can find the Data Movement Gateway installer?
I use the waffle menu here, and I go to Data Gateway.
Okay.
What I need to do is to deploy. And when I deploy one,
Right, so we've got two types of gateways. There's the direct access, which enables on-premise data sources to securely connect to Qlik Cloud Analytics. And what we want is the Data Movement Gateway, which will allow us to connect SAP to our Qlik Talend Cloud data integration.
yes. So once I select that and acknowledge, download that, I use WinSCP to move that RPM package to my Linux VM server that we are using to install the gateway.
Okay, just drag and drop. That's easy. How do you connect to the Linux machine where we're installing the Data Movement Gateway?
I am using just a typical Linux client called Putty on my desktop. It's a simple client tool to log into the VM gateway server. I've already logged in.
Okay, so how do we get things started?
We're ready to install the package, so this is the command to install.
All right, so this is the command to install the Data Movement Gateway.
Okay, let it rip.
Let it rip. I'm not used to Linux, but seeing that little bar grow just makes me happy. Nice.
Yes.
Okay, now that that's run, I love how it provides instructions right here. So the next step is to set the URL of our Qlik Cloud tenant. So that's just the first part of the URL?
Right.
Your tenant URL. Okay.
Yep. We're good to go.
No such file or directory?
You have to go to the bin directory and execute the command.
Oh, right, we missed a step. Okay, so the gateway movement bin directory. So once we get there, we can run the command, and what will this do exactly?
This actually defines the gateway to your tenant.
Okay.
It says, hey, this is where your tenant location is via the URL statement.
That makes sense. All right, what's the next step?
The next step is to generate a key to establish an authenticated connection between the data gateway that I just installed and the Qlik Cloud tenant.
Whoa. So it spits out a long key, and it says that was successful. That's good. Do we need to copy that?
Yeah, this is the actual certificate that registered the tenant to the gateway.
Okay, so we've got the key. can you show us how to create a data space for the gateway on the cloud tenant? Okay, from administration and spaces, I guess the create new button.
Here I am at creating a data space to manage my gateway and data movement. And I will create it.
Okay, so now we've got a space to host the gateway. Where do we set up the gateway from the tenant side?
Go to your administration, data gateway, and I'm ready to create one.
Okay.
SAP Gateway 1.
And then we got two types of gateways. We're going with the data movement.
Associated the space that I just created and paste. And one thing you want to make sure is get everything between the two squirrely brackets.
All right, squirrely bracket to squirrely bracket. Great. And that is that registration key that identifies the gateway from the Linux side to your tenant.
Authentication, yes.
I see our new gateway there down at the bottom, and it's disconnected. Okay, so what's the next step?
Make sure it's started.
And what is this command doing?
Just getting a status.
Okay. So I see a failure.
Yeah, that means the gateway hasn't been started yet.
Okay, and there's the command to start the service. The service is actually called rep agent. Is that right?
Right.
The process that runs.
And after you run that status command, what are we looking for here to let us know that it started?
See where it says active running?
Right.
That's what we want to make sure we see when you do the status.
The gateway is now connected to the tenant. Great. What's the next step to be able to make that SAP HANA connection?
Once you have the data gateway agent running on Linux, now we want to make sure we have the ODBC drivers available from the given vendor that you're going to connect to. And under the gateway, there's a directory called drivers. And under that drivers directory, do a /install. This is important. This gives you the list of the supported source and target endpoints that the gateway supports. So if you notice, there's a SAP HANA directory. Because we're connecting to SAP HANA, this would be where you want the ODBC driver files copied to. And you want to have a SAP HANA directory created.
Okay, so now that we've got that directory created in the appropriate location on Linux.
Correct.
And what is the file that we're actually copying? Is it that SAR file?
Yes. These are the two files that I will copy across.
Oh, both files. All right.
I just wanted to add, once you have the client software via zip file or RPM file, you just want to make sure all files for that client is copied to that specific directory.
Right. So for whatever supported source we're using the data movement gateway to connect to, copy over all those files for that specific endpoint to the folder listed back here.
Correct.
Okay, what's next?
You want to stop the gateway agent.
Oh, right.
Yeah, anytime a source or target endpoint / data source is added, you want to make sure that you recycle your agent or you stop it.
And that command's just to check the status, confirm it's stopped. And where do we see that? Ah, dead.
Dead.
Nice.
So we know it's stopped.
All right.
You go back to your driver's bin directory.
So now we can run the install.
Correct. That will read and install the client software, populate the proper odbc.ini file, and the environment variables for the gateway.
So what do we do now?
Start the agent.
Okay, I guess it started.
And now we can just make sure we check the status. Note,
Active and running.
It's
Nice.
running. Now the prerequisite has been set up on your gateway agent.
Great. Well, now that we've completed setting up the data movement gateway for SAP HANA, let's move over to the Qlik Talend Cloud tenant under Connections and create a new connection. Do we put that in the same space as our gateway?
Correct. Search SAP space HANA.
There it is. And I guess we're selecting our gateway.
Correct.
And what's the server there?
The server is the actual SAP server that you're connecting to.
And instance number?
Depending on your SAP HANA database, you may have an instance number. We're using instance number 0, and the database architecture is a single tenant.
Okay. And username and password for that SAP database. And what do we enter for these CDC properties?
That would be information you get from your SAP admin. If this is not filled in, it's going to use the default user that you log into the server.
Okay. And these log settings?
That tells the trigger for change data capture every 5 minutes. We're going to copy whatever's in your HET rep underscore CDC underscore changes table, and we're going to copy it to the log table. And then that's where we're going to process the changes. And then if you note, you can use SSL connections. So these internal properties, they would be values for the specific endpoint. In a normal setup configuration, there is no internal parameters that you need to set.
Test
If you do a
connection.
test connection
Succeeded.
and create, there you go.
Great. So we've set up the connection through the data movement gateway to the SAP HANA database. Let's create a task to load that SAP data to an existing connection, let's say SnowFlake. So would you show us how to create a new project?
Yes.
Okay, create.
Give it a name and the space.
And we're going to use data pipeline. Snowflake connection. Select. Here's my target. Create.
Okay, onboard data. Task name.
Yep, say next. Now I'm going to
Pick
select my
your
source. Say next. So I'm going to select the tables under my schema that I have defined in SAP HANA. Support US. And I want to search. Even though it says dataset name, it's the actual table on the SAP HANA.
Okay.
And then I want to select employee as an example. Add selected dataset. And then say next. Replication only. And we're going to reload.
Okay. I love how it visualizes it for us. So we've got the SAP HANA source, landing, and storage is SnowFlake.
Create. Now I want to do a validation. Okay. It says completed. And we can do our prepare.
It's creating the artifacts, and that means the tables in SnowFlake.
Correct.
Cataloging them and ready to run. And now it's creating the
storage area on something
storage area.
For the data.
Okay.
Deploying the task. Data is updated.
Ready
so
to
now
run.
we can run it.
Just so I understand the terminology, landing is reading and storage is writing. Is that right?
Correct. Yes.
Great. All right. Thank you.
Run. It's completed. And this guy's running.
It's read it, and now it's copying.
Right.
Actually moving the data.
So this is actually moving the data from the storage within the Qlik Talend cloud to the actual SnowFlake target tables or data sets.
Awesome. So now the full load task has completed. Can we see what the data looks like in SnowFlake?
Yep. This is my database that we defined in Qlik Talend Cloud. Here it is. Notice the schema name.
Yeah, it just used the name of the project _ landing.
Correct. And then this is the actual table. If you see here, this is the data from SAP HANA to SnowFlake.
Very cool. And can we see the source data in SAP to compare?
Yep. This is just a JDBC application connecting to my HANA source environment.
Great. And there's the same employee table. Awesome.
Hopefully that was helpful.
Yeah, thank you so much, guys. Now it's time for Q&A. Please submit your questions to the Q&A panel on the left-hand side of your ON24 console. A lot of questions already come in, so I'll just read them from the top. First question. Can the data movement gateway be used to connect directly to a client-managed QlikSense Enterprise installation? To connect data to on-premise data sources to QlikSense Enterprise, you actually need to use the direct access gateway, and they have very similar names, so it's easy to get confused.
Right. So, yeah. So that is correct. The data movement, that gateway would not be able to do that. It's only through direct access.
Okay, great. Next question. Is it possible to use the same DMG with multiple SAP applications to the same tenant? Or do multiple gateways need to be set up?
No. So as we shared during the demo, we were using SAP HANA as our
Uh-huh.
source. That's just one. You can have additional SAP connections via the SAP application DB endpoint, also the SAP ODP endpoint or extractor. It depends on the connection type that you defined.
Okay, but different connection types can still use the same gateway.
Correct. Yep.
Great. Moving along. Next question. Are there any troubleshooting guidelines for trying to resolve tables reverting to suspended status? I guess somebody's having an error message and looking for some guidelines.
Yeah, so tables being suspended could be a multiple of things. It depends on the type of activity on the source that you're processing from your Qlik Talend Cloud. There's various solutions. In most cases, if you're doing change data capture, you would want to start your pipeline from timestamp or do a reload of the tables. And that
Okay.
resets the table status and then allows the processing to continue.
Okay, great. Next question. Where do we find the proper drivers for the gateway? And we looked at that in detail for the
Yes,
SAP HANA,
right.
but what would you suggest if they're not quite sure what they're looking for?
Yeah. So anytime you have a question or there's a doubt, I would always refer back to the Qlik Cloud documentation for data integration, and I would search for that specific data source slash endpoint that you're going to connect via the gateway. That's where you'll see the prerequisites for those specific ODBC drivers, which are per vendor, not per click.
Right, right. Our next question is a little specific. After getting the gateway connected status in the tenant and installing the drivers, I'm encountering a cannot connect to ODBC provider error. Any tips for resolving this?
The first thing I would do or check is to make sure after you did the installation of the DVC driver that you either make sure you stop the agent prior to the
Hmm.
install or you make sure you recycle after you did the installation of the DVC driver. That would be
Right.
the first step.
That's a really good tip. And that was an easy step to miss, I think, is
Correct.
remembering to turn off the agent and restart the agent before
Yes.
and after you do those installation steps. Okay. Next question. Does the data movement gateway require an additional license to use?
No. I I'm not so Troy, this question, I'm not sure. That was a curveball question. Yeah,
Sorry.
that I would not be sure about.
All right, that's fair. It's yeah. I mean, you guys are working in support. You're not salespeople.
Like you said, we're support, so
Yeah, from my experience, it's if it's available, as you saw in the administration section, data gateways deploy. If you have that area to deploy, then you don't require an additional license. But if your tenant does not allow the use of the gateway and you don't even have that deploy button or that gateway section, yeah, it's good to reach out to your account manager if there's ever any confusion, for sure. Next question. Where can I learn more about ClickTown Cloud data pipelines? Is there a course that's available?
The essentials, basically, course that we have the URL, Academy.
yeah,
There's
and
introduction.
I just wanted to add to that, thanks, Vihi, that anything as far as the pipeline, I would refer back to the help document. There's a
Hmm.
lot of videos out there that are shared and are public that you could go
Okay.
through as needed.
Oh, yeah.
All right, just a few more questions. I'm using the SAP extractor as a source and having trouble filtering. Is it even possible to filter the data in the task?
With the SAP extractor,
Uh-huh.
there's a T code in SAP that you would execute. Any filtering for the extractor would be defined through the transaction code in SAP for that extractor. You would not
Okay.
be able to filter that in the Qlik Talend Cloud.
Good to know.
Yep.
Thanks for clarifying that. Last question today. Is there any way to upload SQL script to create new tasks instead of going through the user interface? I guess.
Yes.
Oh, there is.
Yeah, you could actually export a project and then that project is going to have all your definitions and information for your source and your target data sources that you're using in Qlik Talend Cloud if you don't want to go through the manual process. So you just import your project and go through the steps that way.
Great. Well, Vahid, Bill, thank you so much for today going through this demo with us from start to finish. I really appreciate it, and it's great being able to see it all demonstrated, and I think it'll be helpful for people in the future. I appreciate your time.
Thanks everyone for joining this demo. It's been a pleasure to be part of this. I'm sure this product will be improved as we add more functionality to it. Feel free to call us, reach us. We'll be happy to provide you more information if there is any help that we can offer you. Thank you.
Yeah, and thank you, folks. Thanks for joining our session today. As Vahid noted, if you have questions, don't hesitate to reach out via support case. We'll be happy to work with you. It was a pleasure working with you. Take care. Have a great rest of your day.
Great. Thank you, everyone. We hope you enjoyed this session. And special thanks to Vahid and Bill for presenting. We always appreciate getting experts like Bill and Vahid to share with us. Here's our legal disclaimer. And thank you once again. Have a great rest of your day.